Good afternoon and welcome to AIADA's AutoTalk. I'm your host, Rachel Soleimani. Today, we continue our webinar series surrounding COVID-19 and the global pandemic's effect on the automotive retail market. Before I introduce today's presenter, a few quick reminders as always. Everyone that is registered for today's program will receive a copy by the end of this week. And if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the lower right side of your interface under the Q&A bar. Now join me in welcoming Jason Miller, President and CEO at DealerOps. Jason, I know you have a lot of great info to share, so I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Good day, everyone, and thank you so much for that introduction, Rachel. Let me begin by first saying thank you to all of the AIADA members for joining me today for a discussion on information security in the virtual selling environment. Truth be told, we've really been perfecting the art of online vehicle sales for the last decade with indicated year-over-year increases, so we know that it is something that we're very capable of doing. What I want to discuss today that we'll get to, I'll show the agenda shortly, but we're going to discuss an overview of online selling, what the pros, cons are, and review some risks and how to mitigate those risks so that we are successful with our operation. Our industry is unique in the fact that most sales involve negotiations and test drives, so moving to a complete online sales process will be a very interesting journey, but we all know that it'll work. Moving forward, for those that I've yet to meet, let me introduce myself quickly. My name's Jason Miller. I'm the President and CEO of DealerOps. I've been privileged to work in our industry for the last 20 years. My background includes former controller for several dealerships, and I understand exactly what you as dealers face daily. For the last 15 years, I've been building a business focused on dealers and creating ways to best ensure your success and focusing on the safety of your data. Being in the technology realm, I've gained extensive experience as it relates to data in that security, and I'm very happy to share some of those insights with you on what I've learned today. The agenda for today, like I said, we're going to overview of the pros and cons as what we would say the online transactions take over from a traditional visit the dealership, negotiate the transaction, and close the deal. We'll discuss threats and provide examples of cybersecurity threats that you face daily. We'll discuss some best practices so that you can discover ways to safely increase cybersecurity and cyber awareness within your stores. And then we'll close it up and put it all together, and then we'll take some questions at the end. So as an industry, online sales have been increasing at a very rapid pace. If we really look at what we've been dealing with over the past decade, is we have the prevalence of Amazon and consumers' willingness to click and buy. I don't think that's any different for our industry in the automotive space, other than the fact, again, some users and some buyers will want to touch the cars and actually see what's going on with the unit and ask questions and become more informed. But again, the online presence has given us the ability to see, to research information, so we know pricing, we know features, so it's it's becoming a much more streamlined process. Due to the COVID-19 impact, of course, sales were certainly crippled for a month or two, with some areas hit a lot harder than others. But according to our global data, most areas have recovered pretty steadily. Even over the past couple of months, as I spent some time chatting with dealers and seeing how business is doing for them, a lot of those guys are having record months in March and April. Online sales, of course, contribute to this significantly. And again, we know the business model of selling online is proven and evidenced by used car only companies that sell entirely online and seeing their year-over-year trends. Customers are embracing the idea, so that's good to know. And as this continues, obviously, cybersecurity and the protection of your data will be of utmost importance. Moving forward, so some of the quick pros and cons of moving to an online environment, which again, we've all been dealing with these pros and these cons throughout the last decade as we built our internet departments and our BDC departments. And not all of the pros and cons relate to all the dealers, as each dealer is generally pretty unique. From faster turn times to happier customers, online sales are definitely the direction of the industry. The downside to this change is going to be really an increase in cybersecurity. So that's really what I want to talk about today. Again, is cybersecurity. We're going to focus on those threats and how those impact you. So to check in on the pros, just to touch base on those from selling online, we're really going to have a rapid turn time. It'll help us increase our efficiencies. And for new car franchise dealers, of course, I think this will help for increased profit on the manufacturer money. So if we're talking floor plan assistance, advertising assistance, I think our faster turn times on new vehicles will generate a little bit of profit for us. Customers, again, are loving the fact that they can shop from the comfort of their couch. And as customers begin embracing more online vehicle sales, there's going to be a little bit less chance of errors, no keystroke errors by our F&I managers. Customers will continue to shift to buying online, and they will be inputting that data for you via the web. Less necessary paperwork is going to be needed. So everything's moving to a bigger digital footprint and less paperwork driven, or less printed paperwork driven, I should say. However, I think dealers will continue to still print copious amounts of paperwork and build bill jackets for permanent records so they have access to that. Increased efficiency, as I mentioned that. As we streamline these operations that are built around on-demand sales and delivery, I think that we are going to see a marked increase in expense reduction. I think with increased efficiencies, we're going to start seeing a drop in variable personnel costs, and we will start moving toward what I would say it's a fixed rate, more salary-driven, less commission-driven on sales. Again, the pros of selling online, it is the future of the industry, and we've been doing it successfully for the last decade. And as the recent COVID-19 pandemic is teaching us that most, if not all, transactions can be handled via the internet. Cons to moving to online, primarily those are centered around cybersecurity and data protection. Profit's still there. Again, increased efficiency. So there's hard to find a lot of cons to moving into an online-only environment or online-focused environment, other than, again, you're going to be subject to more cyber attacks as dealerships are full of information that hackers and disruptors really want. There's so much NPI in a given dealership that the bad guys can use to do essentially whatever they want to do with that information and target you specifically. Along with the move to online sales, we're going to have a marked increase in cost of data recovery. And it's really dependent on the vendors you do business with. There's a lot of vendors involved in the space, and to know exactly who has what data and where that data is going and to what extent breaches of data is occurring, it's hard to tell right now. Data loss is going to be primarily from cyber attacks attributable to ransomware. That has really taken off in the last few years. There's other types of attacks we'll talk about, but I tell you, ransomware is really what the attackers are using, and we'll discuss that more shortly. Excessive data costs or data processing costs, that's going to start increasing substantially as we rely on those vendors and those outside data providers to facilitate our ability to successfully sell online. I tend to call that line item on the financial statement is really the cost to turn the tech on. And that cost we've seen over the past decade. As soon as our internet sales and our BDC sales have been increasing, we see those increases in data processing as well. Simply by virtue of using vendors to transact your business, you're going to relinquish control or exclusive control of your data. We don't, again, third parties are assisting us with filling out the credit apps online, showing our inventory, lead management software, CRM software, all of that data that used to be within your total control back when we were more of a traditional model is escaping us. So we'll have to be careful of, again, of those vendors and who has what data we need to watch. Quickly, annually we conduct a cybersecurity survey. The last time we did this was August of 19. We'll have a new version coming out in a couple months. And one question that I really wanted to hit on here was dealers that if they've suffered a breach in the last 12 months. Shockingly, 40% said no, not exposed to any hacking, any sort of malware attacks. But the scary part is there was actually 60% of the respondents that said they were subjected to that. And the most reported attack was, of course, malware, which we'll discuss shortly. A second question I asked our dealers was that I didn't include in this presentation was regarding terminated employees and access to systems within their stores. 100% of the dealers that responded, of course, replied that they do have a policy in place, but we all know from prior experience that some users get missed and that access is left turned on. So again, it's going to be key as we move forward and we're more of in an online environment with access to various platforms to be able to monitor those users and make sure that we have removed access if we need to. All right. Let's talk about threats. So the biggest threat that I want to talk about is really social engineering. It's really a new phenomenon that it's really defined by the psychological manipulation of people. They're convinced to take certain actions that seem reasonable. Most of these attempts that these attackers are using are captured by spam filters, but some do tend to slip through the cracks. Attackers source data from a variety of places, primarily the dealership's website. So for dealers that have their staff listed, that's a prime target for who an attacker could target. For example, AP and spoofing a general manager's email address and asking for a check to be cut is something that we've seen in the past. And again, social engineering, that information that they learn, that'll be used to build a relationship. So they build that trust, and it seems so real when they are replying and targeting a specific employee from typically their manager or a supervisor. The next threat I want to discuss is really malware. And that's, by definition, it encompasses all kinds of software that's intentionally designed to disrupt your network, to disrupt businesses. Those include viruses, Trojan horses, and again, ransomware that I've discussed earlier. Ransomware is specifically becoming the go-to attack method that hackers are using to generate their revenue. These attackers generally encrypt a user's data or system, and that prevents access unless a specified amount, obviously the ransom, is paid to unlock that data. Malware is nasty, but it can certainly be dealt with. A real-world example that I want to chat about for social engineering, which included the use of malware and phishing, which we'll talk about next, was a recent attack on a client. It involved a payroll diversion. And what I mean by that is it was an innocuous email received by a payroll clerk from a current employee asking for a simple change to update the direct deposit information. The email looked legitimate, and the payroll clerk replied and sent over the payroll change form to the attacker, and the attacker then replied back with the form and even thanked the clerk for helping them, because they were trying to get this done pretty quick so that their next payroll would go to the right account. That payroll got processed, and the attacker actually got paid. It was only found out and detected afterwards once the employee of the store asked about it, direct deposit. What happened to my check? I don't know what happened. Went back and researched the payroll change form, and I'll tell you, the email looked legitimate, and it did not get caught. But it was still too late to stop the attacker from getting paid. Phishing attempts, these are kind of cleverly named. Phishing attempts are really used to initiate the malware we discussed earlier. It really relies on human curiosity and impulses. On the personal side, you'll get emails about a lottery number or click here for COVID-19 information, and it's really just a way for, and it's usually from some trusted source where it appears to be, and it really is just a way to begin loading malware software on the PC itself. Forms of phishing that I want to chat about include spear phishing, which targets individuals based on, again, data gained from a social engineering campaign. And this data, again, is available on the dealer website, social media networks, LinkedIn, Facebook, those things where they can target specific employees of a dealership or a dealership group. Whaling, that's when the attackers go for the big fish. Most of the dealer principals that are on the call, the CEOs, the CFOs, and what they're doing there, they're targeting who you are and specifically building campaigns around targeting what you would ask your employees for. The less commonly discussed cybersecurity threats really the credential or reuse and sharing. This happens so often in dealerships, and as a controller, I saw it firsthand, and desk guys would share logins to CRM information or to vehicle pricing information or CRM information, and it's prevalent among salespeople. If a user does get subjected to a cyber attack, attackers then load that malware to the computer. They're seeing all of the login information, and they're essentially building a library of your login information that can be applied to a lot of other websites. So again, it's hard to prevent this because you're trusting your people to do what's right and to really use their own information, log in specifically using their login information and not share that. Tough to do, tough to overcome. Another threat that is a favorite topic of mine is really dealerships and groups that allow employees to use their personal email within the organization. This happens a lot too, as we can look, as I go back to our platform and see users that are loaded, I see Hotmail and Yahoo and Google email addresses, which is a little bit dangerous. The reason why is that personal email accounts are outside the scope of your IT department's control. They don't have the same security protocols apply. There's the corporate email structure would really prevent a little bit more of that than what you can control on the personal side. There's no backups, there's no archiving, and again, they're just not subjected to your security policy. So very dangerous. If you allow employees to use personal email addresses for business purposes, it really means that your dealership information is stored outside of your store, outside of what you have control over. And that obviously presents some legal risk to your organization for privacy concerns, network disruptions. Personal email addresses are a little bit easier to hack than, say, a corporate structure that is maintained on a domain enforced network. The best practices, by far, what I've learned is employee education. The more we can teach our employees on the dangers of malware, on the dangers of phishing schemes, and how those attackers make their moves, the better off we are as an organization. Coaching employees to follow the cybersecurity policy. If you haven't established one, I would highly suggest that. But again, establishing a policy does not help us enforce it unless we physically look into how our employees are behaving within our environment. So, employee listing on dealership sites, I touched on that earlier. They should be reconsidered, as, again, that provides detailed information to hackers on who they can socially engineer against and make their way into your organization. It used to be common practice, but attacks can usually be traced back to dealer websites. So the trend to remove this information from the web is actually happening more frequently. We do periodic spot checks to see who's on, if dealerships have their staff listed. And again, it's something we really, by nature, want to do because we want those customers to know who our people are and they know that they're available for them to interact with. But that's still putting information into the hands of people that don't need to know that information, or at least it makes it too easy for them. Implementation of software, that goes without saying, that offers a robust protection under cybersecurity threats. Antivirus software. I commonly see in stores that all the PCs have antivirus installed, but they don't process the updates. Your operating system, such as Windows, people don't process those updates, and there's often very important patches that prevent hackers and prevent attacks as they're found. Most of what you deal with on the cybersecurity side, it's much like a vaccine and us as who we are as people and what we're trying to work on against COVID and find that vaccine. You don't know, you can't build the vaccine until you recognize the threat, and unfortunately, those are cleverly disguised very often, and so it takes time to find those. But again, as soon as they find them, again, updates are very, very, very important to the software. Of course, we want to ensure our employees aren't sharing credential information. And the other tough one that we deal with in stores is really, and as a controller and knowing how many websites I had to log into every day, forcing a change of those passwords is rather difficult and becomes, I don't want to say burdensome on employees, but you get a lot of pushback. But that can be circumvented by using password managers and, again, enforcing that policy. Lately, the big thing about that helps control these issues is really network domain controllers. I know that sounds pretty scary, but it's not really. It's really a way to for all of your machines to connect to one source, so you can have your policies, you can force updates, you can add, remove users pretty rapidly. It's really a master hub that all the devices within your network connect to. Your computers, your printers, your security cameras. So it is the best weapon that your IT departments can possibly have. That way it gives them a lot more control over trying to touch each machine individually or trying to monitor users individually as well. And the other nice part about domain controllers is that users, they can move around within the store, so especially on the sales side. So if I go to a specific PC and I log in, I'm using my network login, so I'm actually logging into all of my data that's stored within my domain controller, so I don't have to try to chase that down off of a separate machine. saves a tremendous amount of time from configuring each device individually as well. So network domain controllers, if you don't use it, I would suggest you look into that. Most of the stores that I get the opportunity to visit and chat with, they do not use that. It's more on an individual basis, and that becomes really a burden for the IT side because they're trying to keep up with rapid changes. They're trying to push down updates to certain computers for patches from the operating side, our operating software, and those, again, the antivirus software that generally is neglected because users don't want to take the time to do that. Next up on the best practices side of the discussion is really the remote automated backup solutions. Those are what really provide our protection against ransomware. We see that pretty often now where users are backing up their important documents to it's automated backup systems so that users don't have to remember to do that. And it allows quick recovery for your IT management team. So it's essentially what happens in your ransomware attack, which again happens pretty frequently, is the data is encrypted or a user clicked on a malware link, the software gets installed on the computer itself, and then the attacker will lock that machine and then lock access. Now, the cool part about using a remote backup solution is that it's easy to overcome a ransomware attack. We can disable that machine off of our network and wipe it and effectively eliminate the leverage that an attacker would have because we can back up from a secure site the data file that we needed. Again, it saves a tremendous amount of time and frustration when you're dealing with ransomware attacks. And as they say, an ounce of prevention is worth the pound of cure. So moving forward to closing thoughts, again, it's cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a tough topic to really discuss or really generate interest in because it's not graphs and nice numbers and speaking to how we're performing as an industry, but it's a very, very important process of operating as a dealership group or store within an environment, especially with online sales increasing. So thinking ahead, the faster we move to an online processing, really the security of your data should become a bit more reliable. We're no longer printing paperwork and walking around and there's a credit app lying around on a salesman's desk. There's no paperwork printed that is left behind, no bill jackets lying around that we can get fined for. So I think with fewer touch points and less, I guess I would say, data collection on your part, where we're not manually collecting paperwork and again, building our bill jacket, I think that is helping that become more manageable. The best prevention, again, is employee education. The more we can direct them to the security risk and why we don't click links, we check before we actually reply, that becomes so important. That helps us mitigate risk substantially. A lot of organizations, in fact, and we do the same in our organization, is if we get an email request from a user, we use an internal, even a chat function to follow up with whoever sent that email or asked the question to make sure that was legitimate. Always pay attention to the email address. That's always key. The downside, again, the downside of using a lot of vendors and moving to the online environment is where we lose that control of data, and we don't know exactly where that data might wind up. Like I said, it used to be the single holder of your data, and I would argue that your data is the single most valuable asset you have in your store. I know in buy-sell transactions, we're focused on hard assets, inventories, we're focused on parts inventories and vehicle inventories, but again, that data is very valuable, and that's why hackers are so determined to get it. So implementing these best practices, of course, it's going to create peace of mind for owners and dealer principals, which at the end of the day helps us all be better and helps us focus on sales and actually building our online presence. We know that it's possible. We see companies like Amazon that has paved the way for online sales and made society more of a click to ship or a click to buy in society. And we see companies like Carvana who are exclusively online only, with, of course, physical locations to pick up cars or they're delivered for your sales increasing. And again, we've been doing this for the last decade as dealers. We know how to do this and we're good at it. With that, I'll close this down. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to let us know. Let Rachel know. She'll forward them over to me. And again, it's been my privilege to present to you today. It was my first AIADA Auto Talk, so I enjoyed the opportunity to talk to you. And if you have any questions, please, again, don't hesitate to reach out and let us know, and Rachel will communicate those to us.
Jason, this is really great information. Thanks for speaking with us today. We appreciate it. Again, to those on the line, you'll be receiving a recording of this webinar by the end of this week. To continue our COVID-19 webinar series, join us back here on Tuesday, June 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern as Aaron Kerrigan of Kerrigan & Advisors discusses COVID-19's impact on the dealership buy-sell market. So be on the lookout for promotions on how to register. For more information about AIADA, visit aiada.org. Thanks for joining us and have a great day, everyone.